Babalou, Madame Alou. Ah bon, ah bon. Et belle type. Ah bon, ah bon. Ah bon, ah bon. Et belle type. Ah bon, ah bon. Ik papo, het pelripo. Ik papo, het pelripo. Papoune touche le xénophobie.
This is Goblins Quest 3. My name is Rick, and welcome to Saving Often. My goal with this series is to create an adventure game travelogue of sorts, where I can spend some time revisiting the games I grew up on and sharing some of my memories and experiences along the way. I chose Goblins Quest 3 because this was actually the first game that I ever owned, the first Sierra game anyway. My parents were big Sierra fans. They and my brother would play them all the time when I was growing up. I know that the first computer that they owned was a Tandy in the early 80s, and they bought Space Quest 1 along with it, and little did they know the impact that it would have on all of us. My dad just loved these games. He loved the puzzle solving. My mom would sit there with him and take notes and work together on it. I mean, they'd write angry letters to Sierra if there was something they didn't like. They'd always buy the latest everything. My father would go into debt to upgrade the computer because he just wanted to see the latest and greatest at all times. So I was always around Sierra games growing up. And at one point, I must have been 6 or 7 in the early 90s, my dad gave me a catalog, probably a Radio Shack catalog, and he turned it to the software section, and he said, "Hey, son, pick out a game that you want. I'll get you anything that you want out of here, just let me know." So I looked at it and, looked at all the different games, and I saw an edutainment title. I don't remember what it was. It was something to do with ABCs. But I pointed that out, that's what I wanted, and he didn't like that pick very much. He thought that I was too old for it, he thought that I'd be bored by it, so he took it upon himself to buy me Goblins Quest 3 instead. Now, at first when I received it, I was a little upset because it's not what I wanted, but I quickly fell in love with this game. It was unlike any other Sierra game that I had seen him play. It has a lot of mechanics that are just, frankly, very wildly different, which is, stands to reason because the game was actually developed by Cocktail Vision and not Sierra. Sierra simply published it. But still, this was my adventure game. This wasn't a series that my parents had played. This wasn't anything that we had any familiarity with. It was all mine, and with the help of a hint book, I worked my way through it. I mean, I was too young at the time, and the puzzles were too obtuse, so there's no way that I was making progress on my own, but I still loved going through and, seeing the world and unraveling the story and seeing the different puzzles and characters, and the comedy really just, I loved it. I adored everything about this game. So I thought this would be a very good introduction to this series. And I'm really looking forward to digging back into it and kind of seeing some of the stuff that I haven't seen in 20 plus years. I've replayed parts of the game in recent years as an adult, but I've never gotten more than maybe a third of the way through, so I'm going to know a lot of stuff that happens early, but later on it's going to be a little trial and error for me, and there's going to be a lot of things that I just flat out don't remember in a good way, things that are going to surprise me, and I'm just looking forward to getting those experiences again. This is just something that I have not revisited too in-depth since I was little, so yeah. So if you're not familiar with the Goblins games, they're really more of puzzle games as opposed to adventure games in the traditional sense. They feature, for the most part, they'll feature an inventory, they'll feature puzzle solving, but they don't have a lot of the same non-linearity to them as maybe some of the other Sierra games or LucasArts games. There's not big sprawling worlds to explore. They're mostly confined to a handful of screens at a time. In Goblins 3 especially, we'll often only be able to access one screen, maybe 2 or 3. In Goblins 2, it was similar. There were only a handful of screens, but I think in Goblins 1, you really only had one screen at a time. So these are all very self-contained areas. Some inventory items and characters will carry through, of course, but for the most part, it's pretty easy to tell what you need to be working with and what puzzles you need to solve. So Goblins 1 actually had 3 protagonists, and the title is spelt with 3 I's, so each I represents a different character. You had Bobo the Warrior, Hooter the Magician, and Dwayne the Technician, and each character had their own strengths and weaknesses and things that they were good at doing. So a lot of the puzzles revolved around learning which goblin you had to employ for each situation. Now, unfortunately, Goblins 1 also had a health point system, so it was possible to die, which I felt kind of stunted some of the fun. I don't like not being able to experiment. It's okay in other Sierra games because you can always save and restore, but I didn't like having a resource to deal with. Luckily, I didn't play Goblins 1 until many years later, so it didn't really color my expectations from the series as a kid. Goblins 2 was a lot friendlier. Goblins 2 had 2 eyes, so of course there were 2 goblins. You had the polite and proper Fingus and the rude and reckless Winkle. Once again, each goblin had their own strengths. They would tackle any problem differently, whereas Fingus might be friendly and polite and accommodating and respectful to a character, Winkle would stick out his tongue and then insult them. So, once again, the game really relied on you figuring out what goblin to use for each situation and work your way through the various puzzles. Goblins 3 is very similar to 2, but again, 1 eye, we now only have one primary protagonist, and that is Blount. Blount is a reporter who is trying to get to the bottom of some strife between Queen Xena and King Bod. So, that's kind of the premise behind this whole thing, behind the whole series. The games are loosely connected. But, for the most part, you don't really need to know anything about Goblins 1 or 2 to get into 3. They are all very charming games. I highly recommend playing through them, or at least watching through, my playthrough. But, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to revisit it and see some of these things that I haven't seen in many years, and I just kind of want to dive right in. So, as you'll see, right off the bat, it looks a lot different from a typical Sierra game. You don't have a set of icons, you don't have a parser, you've got an arrow. It actually has more in common with a LucasArts game. You can scroll over things on the screen, and it'll highlight them at the bottom with what they are. Each scene in Goblins 3 is a panorama, so we can kind of scroll left and right. It's a little finicky at times. We can move Blount around by clicking the left mouse button. We can right-click to access inventory. We can pull out inventory items, and we can put them back away. So we are here on this flying vessel, as you saw in the introduction. We are the last one aboard this vessel. Everybody, including the captain, has abandoned the ship. So things are looking kind of grim, and we're going to have to find a way off of here. So I will let Blount introduce it with our first line of dialogue.
I must leave this ship with the barrel that is at the stern.
So there you have our goal. We have to leave the ship with the barrel that is at the stern. So we get a couple of extra things here, again, things that don't really show up often in Sierra games. Aside from the typical disk management and a couple of options and the inventory, we also get 5 jokers. And if I recall correctly, these jokers are limited per save file, so you will get 5 hints throughout the game if you need them, and no more. We also have the Goblins News, which is a little bit of background and lore by way of an article written by Blount. Each scene has its own news page. That's pretty cool. We'll be checking out all of those as we go. And you also have the aim of the screen. And now this is interesting because it shows you a map of the entire game. Every location that you see here is some place that we are going to explore throughout our quest. we're going to kind of take a serpentine path through here, ending up here in the top right corner. Now, I only really remember up until about here. I remember bits and pieces from all the other screens, but this is as far as I've ever gotten as an adult. So everything on the top half of the screen is going to be new to me, and I'm really excited about it. I look at some of these icons and characters and locations, and I can remember little pieces, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Once you click off of the map, you'll see the goal of the screen. In this case, Blount must free Chump, then find the way to leave the flying ship aboard the barrel. These aims are a little too hinty and spoilery for my taste. Playing through it, I've seen that they tend to give you some ideas of what you need to do before maybe you've had a chance to find that out for yourself. So I'm going to largely ignore the aim of the screen. But I still wanted to show it off as, just another feature that kind of sets it apart from other Sierra adventure games. So yeah, that's the basic gist of it, and we can get started now trying to find our way off the ship. Oh wait, no, there's one more thing I wanted to cover, the Goblins news, that's right. So again, this is a little lore description of what's going on on each screen, and these are often pretty clever and kind of fun. So this is an article, again, written by Blount, called Impossible Mission. And it reads, I am Blount, your faithful reporter, and I am starting the fabulous trip to the foreign country of Foliander. I promise I will bring back an interview of Queen Xena and King Bod, who are enemies. Up here in the top corner, you often get a little foreshadowing for something that you might see on the next screen. And here it reads, using the Galodian method, learn to speak Galodian in one night. And spoiler alert, we will not be learning the Galodian method. We will be using a different method to speak a different language to the characters that we will be meeting soon. But first, we have to get off of this ship. So we can see a golf club here. We have a golf ball there, very fortuitous. There's a parachute here that might be helpful. A barrel and a rope. There's a hook attached by screw to this wall. A knot up here on the railing. And over on this side, we have a loop. There's a weight on a rope. There's a rope. A door, which will actually lead us over to this door if we walk through it. A toolbox. A flagstone. A hand. And naturally, on top of the masthead, a tooth. So let's get cracking. We'll pick up this golf club first and foremost, do a little flip, and we are off. One other kind of fun thing is if you pick up an inventory item and you use it somewhere where you can't use it, or you just click on Blount, you get a little animation for each one, which is kind of fun. So we'll take that golf club and let's try it on this golf ball and see what happens. And this is going to give you your first taste of the kind of slapstick comedy that you can expect from the Goblins series. There's a lot of really silly, cartoony stuff in here that, again, it's a little corny, but I think it's kind of charming. This parachute over here, I remember as a kid thinking this was just the funniest goddamn sequence. I don't know that it really holds up, but... At the time, I just remember cackling over that and inviting my neighbor friends in and showing them the animation, and they probably thought I was crazy because it's really not that funny, but that's again an example of the sort of humor that kind of pervades these games. So we can't get off by parachute. The golf ball does absolutely nothing. We need to see what we can do here on this screen. So I'd like to get this hook off of this wall, but there's a screw holding it in place. Of course, I can't just pick up the hook because adventure game. I have to find a way to get that screw off. So let's come over here and check out this toolbox and see if there's anything in here that we can find to help. We found a bag of pepper. Makes you sneeze. Let's see what else we have in here. There is a plunger. And is there anything else in the box? Ah, yes, a mousetrap. Okay, so that is everything that we can get from this box. So no screwdriver. Let's come back over to this screw and see if there's something else that we can use to retrieve this hook. The coin will fit nicely in the slot on the screw. So, pocket the coin and pick up the hook. And what better place to put a hook than on a loop? Perfect. Okay, so moving right along. Let's come up here. This rope is just a little sight gag. I don't think that it does anything important. But this weight will do something important. It raises an umbrella, and unfortunately...
I can't catch this umbrella by myself. I need help.
I cannot catch the umbrella by myself. So that kind of opens the door for our first dual character puzzle. Now, as I mentioned before, there were 3 characters in Goblins 1, 2 in Goblins 2, and now only 1 in Goblins 3. There is one main protagonist, being Blount, and we're going to spend the majority of the game with him. But there's also a number of sidekicks that we'll get throughout, such as Ouya the Magician or Filbert the Snake. So we are going to meet the first of those sidekicks now. I'm going to walk over here to the stern of the ship and see about untying this knot. And there we have a parrot. So let's click on him and talk to him and see what he has to say.
Big bear, big boom, big bear, boom, big boom, big boom, big boom, 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 boom.
His name is Chump. The sailors locked him up because he was impossible.
Okay, so Chump is impossible, and we need to rescue him from this bag suspended by a rope from the mast of a flying ship that is going down. Now, how would you remove a parrot from this bag? Clearly, you would probably use your parrot retrieval device. However, we do not have one of those, but what I do have is a golf club, so we'll just kick the crap out of him. And there we go. Chump has been freed, but now finds himself in a new situation.
Boom bear, boom bear, bear, big boom bear, big boom boom bear, big boom, big boom bear, big boom bear, boom boom bear, big bear, boom boom.
Chump offers to help if I get him out of there.
Okay, fantastic. I'd like to note, too, the little gibberish that they speak back and forth as they talk. I love that so much. I would walk around muttering that to myself as a kid, and even as a 33-year-old adult, I may or may not still do it from time to time. But, you know, just more of the game's charm. So I need to help Chump get out of this hole that he has found himself in. And the golf club worked great before, so let's give it another shot.
Big bear, boom.
He doesn't like that very much, and it didn't work. So we need to find something else. And yes, it's going to be the plunger. Okay, so Chump has now been freed, and he's willing to help us. So by clicking on Chump, I can bounce him around the screen. And by clicking on Blount, I can move him around. A lot of these puzzles that require both characters are going to require me to use them in tandem. They're timed puzzles, not in the sense that you have a time limit before you fail them, but rather you have to do things, again, in tandem. You have to have the characters cooperate with one another to achieve some goal, and we're going to see our first example of that here. If you recall the umbrella that popped up on the hook, why don't we send Chump up here and pull this weight? Chump lifts the weight, And Blounce grabs the umbrella. So we have an umbrella. We can put the umbrella in this knot hole and presumably save us from falling too fast in true cartoon physics fashion. But we need to find a way to cut that rope. And right now, I don't have anything sharp in my inventory that will cut the rope. However, luckily for us, there is a tooth. And teeth are very sharp. If I step on this flagstone, the hand over here wiggles. So once again, we need to use both goblins to propel Blount up to the top of the ship. And now finally, I can retrieve the tooth. So that is pretty much it for this scene. We can schlep our way over here and hop in the barrel. Toss this umbrella in the knothole and use the tooth on the rope. And what could possibly go wrong? Okay, so now we find ourselves in a bit of a crater. This is the idol. There is a lady here, and she is being guarded by, looks like, 8 guards. There's also a sallow-looking fellow here in this crevice. So looking around, we have our buddy Chump. He made the trip with us, as did our trusty umbrella. So we'll go ahead and pick that back up now. So let's check out the Goblins news for this section. Brief encounter. The first contact as I arrive is brutal since my ship has been hardly bombarded, still in flight. Fate makes me meet the beautiful Winona, who disappeared along with the key of the maze after her father Behoran's death. And our foreshadowing up here is, have fun again at your funeral parties, thanks to the merry trio, Will-o'-the-Wisps. All right, fair enough. So we need to find out more about this Winona. We can't get up to her. Weirdly, we can't get up there that way. So there's a crevice here. There's some hot air coming out of these geysers. We can make this work. Let's grab our umbrella and see if we can't float on up. All right. And let's take a peek through and meet our love interest.
This poor girl is a prisoner. I must fight to free her.
And there is our call to action. We must fight to free her, even if that means us slaughtering every last one of these guards. Maybe we can talk it out. Let's go speak with Hercules.
Now that's enough. Clear the road, please.
He's not listening. Unfortunately, I don't have any weapons. But I do have this golf club. And Hercules is no more. Next is Gromelin. He seems reasonable.
Have you seen what happened to your friend?
Seems reasonable, but is not reasonable. So, I guess we're just going to have to kick the shit out of him, too. Okay. So 2 guards down, 6 to go. Things are going swimmingly so far. in our path on the way down, I see an inventory item. Now, what could that ever be? Ah, yes, a piece of toasted bread. Awesome. I've never been winked at over toast before, but there we go. Okay, Mac is next.
And if I give you a coin, will you let me pass?
Blount trying to bribe him. He's not taking the bait. Hits us twice with the hammer, enough to cause us to take some Excedrin. Alright, well, Blount gave us a little clue there, so why don't we try giving him a coin, see what happens. You can keep this coin, my man. Just kidding, you can look at it while I smack you with my golf club. Okay, get our coin back. So at this point, you're seeing these guards, and I mean, this guy's got a morning star. We've got another guy with a hammer over here, another morning star. This fine gentleman is holding a club of some kind. So you think to yourself, man, I've been whacked over the head several times. I could sure use this helmet that just dropped. Maybe I'll go pick it up.
In this helmet, I could make crumbs, since I have no ammunition.
But you can't pick up the helmet because you need it to make crumbs because you have no ammunition. Okay. Like I said, a little obtuse in places. Classic adventure game logic, but that's okay. We can make do. Since we want to make crumbs, we have some toasted bread. Let's make some crumbs. Pop them in there, and what better way to make crumbs than with our trusty multi-purpose golf club. Squelch that up, and go ahead and grab some crumbs. Next we have Bonsai.
I could put crumbs down his back.
Yes, the first thing that I thought as well was that I could put crumbs down Bonsai's back. Okay, fine. Fine, crumbs down his back. Now we can get back here behind him via this flagstone, which is actually a very clever hidden teleportation device. And when we step on it, we teleport. All right, let's stand upon this rock and commence mission Crumbs on Bonsai. He scratches his neck, and we beat him up. Beat him up and take his shield. This time we can actually take the shield, which, you know, very useful. Good to have. Here we have a hand. Naturally, we'll take the hand. All right. So now we have a hand. Let's bring our buddy Chump up here to join us. And talk to Kendo.
Please,
Kendo's not having any of it, so we'll have to find another way around him. There's also Four Bayless here. He might have something interesting to say. Or, you know, he'll just flip us off. So, fine. He's got nothing to say to us. Let's deal with Kendo. I can try hitting him with my club. But he's faster than me. So, I'll need to find a way to distract him. I can try giving him my coin. But he's not interested in that. He just wants to hit me with his hammer. Well, maybe we can just shake on it. Ha ha ha! Got him. Right, takes care of Kendo. We'll take our hand back. Now, I'm not even going to bother talking with Zembla over here. He's just going to club me with his stick. But there is a branch right in front of him. And we do have a shield. So, of course, we can mount that shield on the branch. Why would you mount the shield on the branch, you say? Well, quite simply put, we can then stand on this rock and sprinkle pepper in his nose. And Zembla takes care of himself. All right, we'll grab his club off of the ground. and scoot up to Django. Now, to this point, we have not needed to use Chump for anything, but he is going to start playing a very, very strong role in these final couple of guards. He's going to distract Django, so we can grab his tongue and catapult him off the ledge. Finally, we're at Punky, our final adversary. Blount knows better than talk to him, but he still gets punched in the eye. So okay, we'll have to deal with Punky. I see there's a rock above his head, and a ladder missing a rung. Just so happens to be that we have a rung in our inventory. Let's go ahead and pop that into place and climb up and finish this once and for all. Except it's a rubber rock, so lands in front of him. I don't see how we could possibly ever find another way around doing this except to have Chump go to Punky and get him out of position.
Since the object stopped close to him, Forbalis got out of his hiding place and grabbed it. Winona ran after him.
No more guards! No more Forbalis! Even Winona is gone. I was alone, but I had the unpleasant sensation of being watched.
I am King Bud. But who are you to interfere at the moment I was going to get the key of the maze from Winona?
This scared the ever-loving crap out of me when I was little. I mean, holy shit. First you see this terrifying, creepy guy with an eye sewn shut, grabbing you by the collar and dressing you down. And then he throws you to the wolves, literally, who devours you and spits out your skull and then laughs at you. Oh my God, that was nightmare fuel. I do very vividly remember the first time that I saw that, being scared out of my mind. I don't know if it's one of those instances where I actually pushed the power button on the computer or if I just got up and ran out of the room, but I did something way more dramatic than is worth for a cartoon skull and a laughing, goofy purple wolf. But anyway, unfortunately for us, Blount is now dead. We are in a dark room with some rough areas and no way of seeing where we're going. Let's pop over to Goblins News. And we see that death is at our heels. And once again, another illustration here that just scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. I am worried about the next part of my trip. I am being attacked by King Bod's wild wolf while interfering to help Winona. Right now, I am between life and death. I fight to keep conscious. Go far, but don't tire your mount. Take Giant Ixer and you'll go many miles in no time. All right, so apparently we're only halfway between life and death, even though I watched Blount get eaten and then regurgitated. But hey, you know, whatever. Here we are. We'll just make the best with what we have. And we will do that in the next segment of this run. I'm going to pause it here, but I really appreciate you watching, and I hope that you'll come back. I am planning on playing through this entire game and then digging into a few of my other Sierra favorites. I'd love to go through the Space Quest series. I'd love to see the rest of Goblins. Pop into King's Quest, Quest for Glory, all of the games that were kind of very formative for my upbringing. But I'm really excited about this. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope that you'll stick around. And until next time, save early, save often.